I never expected it to end like this. You know, there's always that one moment in life when everything goes from being fine to completely shattering, and you can't stop it. I just never thought it'd be my marriage. But the thing is, when you start noticing the signs, the small changes, the unexplained absences, you can't ignore them. It started so innocently. I was just finishing up a workout in the gym, like I did every evening. I'd come home, grab a quick shower, and head out to meet some friends for a drink. But that night, something felt different. I walked into the house, and it was oddly quiet. Emily was supposed to be there, maybe cooking something or watching TV, but the place felt empty. No greeting, no sounds. Just silence. I called her name, but no response. I walked around the house, checking rooms, still nothing. Then I saw it. Her phone, sitting on the kitchen counter, lit up with a notification. I know, I shouldn't have looked. But who can resist when their gut tells them something's off? I grabbed it. It was a message, an unread one, from a name I didn't recognize. I shouldn't have done it, but I unlocked the phone. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. You're all I think about. We'll be together soon. I felt a pit in my stomach, like everything in the world just stopped. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. Emily, my wife, my partner. Could she really be cheating on me? My heart raced as I clicked open the message thread. Every part of me screamed to stop, to put the phone down and walk away, but I couldn't. I was in too deep now. I scrolled through the conversation, and it was clear. She had been seeing someone else, and not just anyone. It was someone from her past. Someone she told me had no place in her life anymore. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. There was a knot in my chest, and my hands shook as I put the phone down. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But I couldn't. I was too numb. I didn't know what to do next. The betrayal, it was like a sucker punch to the gut. But worse, I didn't know who I was more angry with, her or myself for not seeing it sooner. I took a deep breath and told myself to keep it together. I needed answers. I needed to confront her. But when? How? And what was I going to say? I heard the door open and her voice calling my name. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. She came into the room, smiling that fake smile she always wore when something was off. I looked at her and asked the only question I could manage. Whose baby, Emily? Her smile faltered for a second. Just a second. But that was enough. It was the first crack in the illusion. I could feel my pulse racing. The moment hung in the air like a thick fog, and I couldn't breathe. The question was simple, yet so much more loaded than I'd anticipated. Whose baby, Emily? She stopped in her tracks, her face briefly flickering with something that resembled panic. But then, just as quickly, she masked it with that polished, perfect expression, the one she'd been perfecting for years. It was like flipping a switch, and suddenly, I was the one left in the dark, trying to figure out what had just happened. She took a step toward me, her eyes wide and apologetic, almost rehearsed. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice too sweet to be real. I stared at her. I couldn't stop staring. There was no use in playing the game anymore. The evidence was right in front of me, yet here she was, pretending like nothing had happened. The nerve of her, trying to sell me this lie when I could see right through it. I'm talking about the text messages, Emily, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The ones from the guy you've been sleeping with. The one who can't wait to see you tonight. Whose baby, huh? Her expression faltered again, but this time, she didn't bother to hide it. Her lips curled into a smug grin, a grin that made me want to slap it off her face. You really think I'm cheating on you? She asked, her tone condescending, almost amused. You really think I'd do that? I felt a wave of frustration hit me. Don't play dumb. I know what's going on, Emily. The messages. The lies. The hours you've been gone with him. I gestured toward the phone on the counter, now burning in the silence between us. Tell me you're not sleeping with him. She rolled her eyes, acting as if I were the one overreacting. You're being paranoid, baby. You always do this when you're stressed about work. I told you, I'm not doing anything wrong. Her words were smooth, practiced. She said them like she'd said them 1,000 times before, like they were just part of the script she'd written for herself. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her until the truth came out. But instead I stood there, too stunned to do anything. The betrayal was like a weight on my chest, suffocating me, and all I could do was watch her lie straight to my face. You're really good at this, aren't you? I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. All these years. I never saw it coming. She laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of humor. It was a laugh of mockery. What, you think I'm going to admit it to you just like that? After all these years of you being so clueless? Please, Ethan, get over yourself. You're just upset because I've finally found someone who actually knows how to make me feel wanted. My heart sank. The words stung in a way I didn't expect. I thought I had prepared myself for this moment, for the lies, the excuses, the hurt. But hearing her say that, hearing her admit so coldly that I wasn't enough for her, shattered something inside of me. Is that what this is about? I asked, my voice cracking. You don't love me anymore, so you go and cheat with him? With some guy from your past? Her eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer, as if she were about to give me a lecture. Ethan, don't act like you're some innocent angel in all of this. You think I don't know about all the nights you've been too busy with work to even look at me? The nights you've come home, barely even acknowledging that I'm here? I opened my mouth to respond, but she didn't give me a chance. I've been here, stuck in this house with you, playing this game we call marriage, and you've done nothing but ignore me. And when I finally found someone who gave me attention, who actually listened to me, well, I didn't know how to resist. The words hit me like a slap in the face. She was turning it around on me, making me the bad guy, as if somehow I had caused this. You're blaming me for your choices? I asked, the hurt and anger creeping into my voice. You're the one who went behind my back. You're the one who betrayed me. Don't try to make this about me. You did this, Emily. You did this to us. She scoffed, shaking her head in disbelief. You really don't get it, do you? You never really paid attention to me, to us. And now you're upset because I finally decided to live my life, because I finally did something for me? I wanted to scream at her, but instead I just stood there, numb. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe how casually she was defending her actions, as if this were all my fault. As if I had somehow deserved this. I took a deep breath, trying to regain some semblance of control. I want you to leave. I don't want you here anymore. I can't do this. I won't do this. Her expression hardened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. Anger? Fear? But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. She stood there for a moment, her lips pressed tightly together, before she spoke. Fine. You want me to leave? I'll leave. But don't think for a second that I'm the one who ruined this. This was never going to work, Ethan. You just never knew it. With that, she grabbed her things and walked out the door, leaving me standing there in a mess of emotions. A part of me wanted to run after her, to beg her to stay, to fight for us. But the other part of me, the part that had been betrayed and crushed, knew that I couldn't. I wouldn't. And so she left. And I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought I knew. This was just the beginning. The hours dragged on like minutes, each one heavier than the last. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where Emily had been moments ago, her absence more painful than her presence ever was in that moment. The house felt like a stranger's home, foreign and suffocating. I couldn't escape the weight of her betrayal, of her words ringing in my ears, mocking me. You never knew it would end like this, Ethan. But now, it was real. She was gone. And I was left with nothing but the hollow ache in my chest. The house had never felt so quiet. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet, and poured myself a drink. I needed to numb the pain, to quiet the incessant thoughts that wouldn't stop spiraling through my head. How long had this been going on? How many nights had she been out there, lying to me, pretending? I thought back to the last few months, trying to make sense of it. There had been the late nights at work, the sudden weekend trips with her friends, the way she'd stopped looking at me the same way. It was as if she'd already checked out, already decided that she was done with me before she ever made the decision to betray me. That thought alone made me furious. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we had built together, everything we had been? But I couldn't afford to sit in my own anger forever. I had to get answers. I had to know the truth, all of it. And so, when my phone buzzed, I almost didn't want to look. But I had no choice. It was her. Emily. She was calling me. She wanted to talk. I almost didn't pick up. Part of me was so sick of her lies, her manipulation, that I just wanted to cut her off completely. But another part of me, the part that still loved her despite everything, needed closure. Needed to hear her say it out loud. Needed to hear her admit it. Hello? Her voice on the other end was smooth, rehearsed, almost too calm. Ethan, we need to talk. Yeah, we do, I replied, my voice tight with anger. You left. You made your choice. What else is there to say? There was a pause, and for a second, I almost thought she was going to apologize. But that wasn't Emily. Apologizing was never her thing. Instead, she continued in that same sickeningly sweet tone. I didn't want it to end like this, but you left me no choice. No choice? I snapped, gripping the phone tighter. You think I left you no choice? You're the one who cheated. You're the one who made that decision. Don't you dare put this on me. I could almost hear her roll her eyes. Ethan, calm down. You're being so dramatic. It's not like I cheated because I hate you. I needed something more, something you weren't giving me anymore. You mean attention? Or respect? I shot back. Is that what you needed, Emily? Because you sure as hell didn't give me much of either. She sighed, exasperated. This isn't about you being a bad husband, Ethan. It's not even about him. It's about me, okay? I needed to feel wanted. I needed to feel alive again, and you were too busy with your work, with everything else but me. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. The audacity of her to sit there, to talk like I had neglected her, to make it sound like her infidelity was some kind of necessary action, something justified, was unbelievable. You wanted to feel alive? Is that really your excuse? I asked, my voice trembling with rage. You think that makes it okay? You think betraying your husband, betraying me, is somehow justified? There was a pause. I could almost hear her thinking, trying to come up with the right words to keep the upper hand. When she spoke again, her tone shifted, becoming more defensive, more cold. Look, Ethan, I don't owe you any explanations. We've been miserable for a long time now. Maybe you didn't want to see it, but I was suffocating in this relationship. You didn't see me. Not really. You didn't see how much I needed you, wanted you. The words twisted in my stomach. I saw you, Emily, I said through clenched teeth. I saw you every day, gave you everything I had. I loved you, I still love you despite all of this. But you just used me. Used me until you found someone else who could give you that fleeting high you were chasing. She scoffed. I didn't use you, Ethan. I didn't owe you anything. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not being enough. That was it. She said it. And suddenly, all the hurt, the confusion, the disbelief, came rushing to the surface. She was never going to take responsibility for what she did. I felt a rush of emotions. Anger, betrayal, hurt. But most of all, I felt disgust. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I married, was nothing but a stranger now. And she was fine with it. You don't get to talk to me like that, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You don't get to throw all the blame on me. You made your choice. Now live with it. We're done, Emily. There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice cold, detached. Fine. If that's what you want, then we're done. I don't have time to argue with you. I've made my choice, and I'm not looking back. She hung up. And just like that, the phone call was over. I felt the weight of her words settle over me, suffocating me, pushing me further down into the hole she had dug for us. But in that moment, I knew it was time to let go. There was nothing left to fight for. The worst part? It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the fact that Emily, the woman I thought I knew, never really cared enough to fight for me. She was gone, and I was left to pick up the shattered pieces of my heart. But one thing was clear: I was done being her fool. This was only the beginning of my journey to reclaim my life. The silence in the house was deafening, more suffocating than anything I had ever experienced. I stood there, the phone still in my hand, staring at the screen, as if expecting her name to pop up again. But it didn't. She was gone. Her words hung in the air, each one sharper than the last. I'm not looking back. I had known, somewhere deep inside me, that this moment was inevitable. For months, I had felt the cracks in our relationship widening, but I refused to acknowledge them. I had kept convincing myself that things would get better, that Emily and I would find our way back to each other. But now, standing in the aftermath of her betrayal, I realized that I had been living in a fantasy, one that she had long since abandoned. I sank into the couch, my hands trembling. It was like my whole body was betraying me, too. Every part of me was screaming to do something, anything, but all I could do was sit there and let the flood of emotions drown me. Anger. So much anger. How could she do this to me? To us? To everything we had built together? She had been my world. I had given her everything. And yet here I was, the fool, sitting alone in the dark, while she was out there living her best life with another man. But there was also a deep, gnawing pain. A pain that I wasn't sure how to describe. It wasn't just the betrayal. It wasn't just the fact that Emily had cheated on me with someone else. It was the loss of trust. The loss of the woman I thought I knew. The woman I had loved with everything I had. And now, that woman had shattered into pieces, leaving me to pick up the wreckage of my heart. I grabbed the bottle of whiskey from the counter and poured myself another drink. It burned going down, but I didn't care. I needed something to numb the ache. I needed to stop feeling for just a moment. I stumbled to my feet, pacing back and forth across the living room. I couldn't sit still. The anger coursed through me, bubbling up from deep within, demanding an outlet. But what was I supposed to do with all this rage? I didn't even know where to begin. I thought about confronting her again, about going to her and demanding answers. But what was the point? She had made it clear that she didn't care. She didn't owe me anything. She had moved on, and I was left to deal with the wreckage of our marriage on my own. I laughed bitterly to myself, the sound echoing in the empty house. What a fool I was. For so long, I had been blind to the signs. The late nights. The excuses. The distance between us. I had been so focused on saving our marriage that I had ignored the fact that she had already checked out. She had already left me, in every way that mattered. But even now, as I thought about it, there was a part of me that still wanted answers. I wanted to understand how we had gotten here. How she could so easily discard me, as if I had never meant anything to her. What had I done wrong? I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed her number. The call rang once. Twice. 3 times. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe I wanted to hear her voice again. Maybe I wanted to hear her apologize, even though I knew deep down that she wouldn't. But the voicemail picked up, and I felt a pang of frustration as I listened to her pre-recorded message. Hey, it's Emily. Leave a message. I hung up, throwing my phone onto the couch in anger. There it was again, that same emptiness. That same, gnawing feeling that had been with me for so long now. The truth of it was undeniable. Emily was gone. She had moved on, and I was left behind. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this. That there were things left unsaid. I couldn't let it go. Not yet. And so, I made a decision. A decision to finally confront the truth. To stop living in the shadow of her betrayal and start taking control of my own life again. I would not let her destroy me. I would not let her define my worth. It was time to let go. And though I had no idea how I was going to do it, I knew one thing for sure: I would find a way to heal. I would rise from the wreckage of my marriage stronger than I had ever been before. The journey ahead would be long, and it would hurt like hell. But I had no choice. I couldn't keep living in the past, waiting for answers that would never come. And as I took another swig of whiskey, I felt the first flicker of something inside me, a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could learn to trust again. I hadn't expected to be the one to reach out, but here I was, pacing in my kitchen with my phone in my hand. Emily hadn't come home that night. I had already tried calling her multiple times, but she ignored every attempt. She wasn't coming back, at least not tonight. The reality of the situation was settling in more with each passing hour. It was almost 2 a.m. when I decided I had enough of being the passive victim in this entire mess. I wasn't going to wait for her to make the first move, to apologize, or even to give me any kind of explanation. It was time for me to take control, to finally get the answers I needed, even if it broke me. I grabbed my jacket, slamming the front door behind me as I walked into the cold night air. The streets were eerily quiet, as though the world around me knew that something had shattered within it, something beyond repair. I drove to the address I knew she had been spending her nights at. I knew she wouldn't be there, not yet, but I had to be sure. I had to confront the situation head-on. The house was dark, and as I parked across the street, I saw no signs of life. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline surging as I thought about what I was about to do. Part of me wanted to drive off, to turn around and forget all of this ever happened. But another, darker part of me wanted answers. Deserved answers. It was then that I saw headlights in the distance. A car moving slowly, coming toward the house. As it got closer, I saw her, the woman I had once loved more than anything in the world, get out of the passenger seat, laughing, her arms wrapped around another man. They were laughing together, their heads close, too close. My heart stopped. I had seen enough. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm despite the rage boiling inside me. I stepped out of the car and watched them, watching them as they walked to the door of the house, her hand in his. I was so angry, my chest was heaving with each breath. She didn't even see me, not yet, but she would. I was done being the fool. I crossed the street, my steps deliberate and forceful. I didn't care if they saw me coming. I didn't care about anything except getting to the truth. I reached the door just as she was about to step inside, and I grabbed her arm, spinning her around to face me. Her eyes widened in shock, but there was no remorse in them. Just annoyance, like I was interrupting something trivial. Like she couldn't care less about me standing there, holding her arm, waiting for her to explain the mess she had made. "What the hell are you doing here, Brad?" she asked coldly, pulling her arm from my grip, as if the whole situation was nothing more than an inconvenience. "You think you can just do this behind my back and walk away scot-free?" I spat, my voice trembling with fury. "I know what's been going on, Emily. Don't think for a second that I'm that dumb." She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms as if she were tired of explaining herself. "Oh please, Brad. We've been over this 100 times. You've been distant, neglecting me. I needed someone, okay?" She shrugged dismissively, like it was no big deal, like my entire world meant nothing to her. "Someone? Someone?" I was almost shaking with rage now, every word like a slap in the face. "You're sleeping with him? This guy? And you think it's okay? That it's justified?" She didn't even flinch. "Yes, I am. And yes, I think it is. I didn't want to hurt you, Brad, but you've been so caught up in whatever you've been doing, I just stopped caring." Her words hit me like a physical blow. She was cold, detached, completely uninterested in how much pain she was causing me. I looked at her, unable to say anything for a moment. It was like everything I thought I knew about her had been stripped away. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted, was gone, replaced by someone who could so easily toss me aside. "Are you even sorry?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The question felt stupid as soon as I asked it, but I couldn't help it. I had to know. Her lips curled into a smirk. "Sorry? For what? For finding someone who actually knows how to treat me? Maybe I am, but it's too late for you to care now." My heart sank. She didn't care. Not about me. Not about anything we had built together. It was over. I felt like a stranger in my own life. Without another word, she turned on her heel and walked into the house, the door slamming shut behind her, leaving me standing there in the dark. I stood frozen for a long time, the cold air biting at my skin, the finality of everything sinking in. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal or the utter lack of any real emotion in her voice. I thought I had known her. I thought we had something real. But I was wrong. I was just another man who had been replaced by someone new, someone who could give her what I no longer could. And just like that, I realized there was no going back. This was the end. But what came next? How would I move on from here? I didn't have those answers yet. But I knew I had to keep moving. Even if I was broken inside, I couldn't stop. I had to find my way out of this nightmare. And no matter how much it hurt, I would do it on my terms. I spent the next few hours sitting in my car, numb. It was like I was suspended in some dark, endless space. The world felt like it had stopped turning, but the pain, the betrayal, they didn't stop. They just kept coming, wave after wave, like I was drowning in the memory of what was no longer mine. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily laughing with him, her body pressed against his, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been living a lie for so long. I tried to hold on to the remnants of what we had, but they slipped through my fingers like sand. I was left holding nothing but the cold, hard reality of what I had discovered. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, the dawn began to break. The first light of morning cast an eerie glow over everything, making the world seem just as hollow as I felt. I could feel the anger rising again, but there was also this deep sense of sadness that I couldn't ignore. It was the kind of sadness that comes when you realize you've given your heart to someone who never truly deserved it. I took out my phone. I had tried calling Emily again. Nothing. She hadn't answered, and I knew she wouldn't. Part of me wanted to leave a message, to confront her once more, but I knew it was pointless. I had already heard everything I needed to hear. The cruel indifference in her voice, the way she had tossed me aside as if I were nothing. I couldn't keep begging for an explanation that she wasn't going to give. I could feel the hot tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. I had been weak for too long, letting her manipulate me into thinking I wasn't enough. I was stronger than that. I had to be. But even though I told myself that, there was this constant tug at my heart. It wasn't just the anger or betrayal. It was the years we'd spent together, the memories we had created. I couldn't just erase those, no matter how much she had hurt me. I still remembered when we first met, how easy it had been to fall in love with her. And now, I felt like a fool for ever believing that anything between us had been real. I finally drove home, my movements mechanical. The house felt empty, like a shell of the life I once had. I walked through the door, but I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel relief or closure, just this heavy weight in my chest that I couldn't shake. I took a seat on the couch, my mind racing with questions. Why hadn't I seen it coming? Why had I been so blind? The truth was, I had been so caught up in my own feelings, in the illusion of love, that I never once considered the fact that Emily might have been planning her escape long before it all came crashing down. I had believed in the version of her I had created in my head, the version that still cared, still wanted to make things work. But that wasn't who she was. She had never been the person I thought she was. I sat there for what felt like hours, wrestling with the thoughts in my head. I tried to go through the motions of a normal day, but it was impossible. Everything felt surreal. The house felt empty without her. Even though I knew she was the one who had chosen to walk away, I still missed her. Or at least, I missed the idea of her. It wasn't just the physical betrayal that cut the deepest. It was the emotional distance. The fact that she had been so detached, so cold. She had used me as a placeholder in her life while she waited for something more exciting, more fulfilling. And when she found it, she didn't even have the decency to let me go with a shred of dignity. She just discarded me. The anger started building again, but this time, it wasn't directed at her. It was directed at myself. How could I have let this happen? How had I ignored all the signs, all the late nights and the distance? I had been a fool. But even as I thought those words, I knew I was done being the victim. The self-pity, the doubts, I was done with it. If I was going to heal, I had to stop being angry at myself. I had to stop asking, what if, and start focusing on what was next. It was time to let go. And yet, even as I made that decision, it felt like a betrayal in itself. How could I just walk away from everything we had, everything I had invested in this relationship? But then I thought about her, and how easily she had moved on, how little she cared about the pain she had caused me. That was the moment it clicked. She didn't deserve my tears, my time, or my energy anymore. I had given her everything, and she had taken it all, leaving me with nothing but memories and the cold, bitter taste of betrayal. But now, it was time for me to take back control. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to apologize. I wasn't going to beg for something that was clearly gone. I was done. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. It was small, but it was there. I wasn't completely broken. I still had a chance to rebuild, to find myself again, to find someone who would actually appreciate me. And maybe, just maybe, I would learn to trust again. But that would take time. For now, I had to focus on me. It was time to start healing. And nothing, not Emily, not her lies, not the pain, could stop me from doing that. I didn't know when I'd be ready to face her. Hell, I wasn't even sure I wanted to anymore. But there was one thing I had to do before moving forward. I needed to look her in the eyes and hear her say it, hear her admit it. No more lies, no more manipulation. I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. And so, I called her. The phone rang for what felt like forever. I wasn't sure why I was so hesitant to speak, but my hands were shaking as I waited. I had to know whether she was going to admit everything or if I would have to drag it out of her like pulling teeth. Finally, she answered, her voice flat, as though nothing had changed. "What's up?" It felt like I was talking to a stranger, not the woman I had loved for so long. The numbness in her voice made it clear that she had already moved on, already detached herself from whatever we once had. I could feel the anger rising in my chest. "We need to talk," she sighed on the other end. "Is this about the other night again? I told you it's over. Get over it, okay?" That was the moment I snapped. "Don't you dare tell me to get over it. Do you really think you can just treat me like trash and expect me to move on like it's nothing?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. I was furious. Furious at her, furious at myself. Furious that I had wasted so many years on someone who didn't even respect me. "I don't owe you anything, okay?" she said, her tone dismissive, as if she were talking to someone beneath her. "You're acting like I've done something so terrible, but you've been a pain to deal with for months. Don't act like this is all my fault." The audacity. She was trying to turn this on me, make it seem like I was the one in the wrong. "No. You're not going to turn this around on me," I said, my voice sharp. "I know what you did, Emily. I know you've been seeing him. Don't lie to me again." For a moment, there was silence on the other end. She was processing it, trying to figure out what her response should be. I could practically hear her calculating how to save herself. But then she spoke, her voice dripping with venom. "Are you really this pathetic? Are you actually going to stand there and accuse me of cheating? You've been so distant, so clingy, I had to find something that made me feel alive again." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I stood my ground. "That's not an excuse. You betrayed me, Emily. And not just once. You've been lying to me for months." She laughed, a cruel, mocking laugh that made my blood boil. "Oh, so now you're the poor, innocent victim? I'm done. I'm over this conversation. Go cry somewhere else." I couldn't take it anymore. The indifference in her voice, the way she was talking to me like I was beneath her, it was all too much. "Is that it? Is that your apology? I deserve better than that, Emily. I deserve respect, and you've given me none. I gave you everything, my trust, my heart, and this is what you do. You go behind my back, cheat on me, and then try to make me feel guilty about it. Get over yourself," she snapped. "I'm not going to sit here and let you guilt-trip me. You know what? You can't even handle the truth. You're pathetic." It was like a switch had been flipped. She wasn't even sorry. She was angry, and it wasn't because of what she had done, it was because I had caught her. I realized then that she had never cared. Not really. I took a deep breath, trying to keep the fury from boiling over. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, but I had to stay calm. If I let her see how much she had hurt me, she would win. And I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. "Fine," I said, voice low but steady. "If you think this is what you want, then go ahead. I'm done. You've made your choice. And don't think I'm going to beg you to stay. I won't." For a brief second, I heard something in her voice. Was it guilt? Regret? Maybe, but I couldn't let myself care. I had to take my dignity back. "I don't need you," she spat. "And you know what? I don't even want to talk to you anymore. We're done. I'll see you around." She hung up. And just like that, she was gone. I stared at my phone for a long moment, the silence pressing down on me. The call had ended, but I couldn't shake the words she had said. They lingered in the air like a bitter aftertaste. I didn't want her back. I didn't need her in my life anymore. But somehow, her final words had stung deeper than I thought possible. In that moment, I realized something. I didn't just lose Emily. I lost the person I had thought I was. The man who believed in love, in trust, in commitment. I had been so sure that our marriage meant something, that we had something real. But now, all I had was a broken version of myself. And I didn't know how to fix it. But I was going to try. I had to. The days following that phone call felt like a blur. Time moved differently now, slower, more deliberate, as if everything was happening in a fog. I went through the motions of everyday life, but my mind was consumed by the aftermath of the confrontation. Emily's words echoed in my head constantly, each repetition digging into the raw wound she had left. I would wake up in the morning, still half dazed from the sleep I hadn't been able to get. My mind would immediately wander to the night of our argument, to the lies she had told, the anger she had shown, and that cold, final phone call. I still couldn't believe how easily she had cut me off. No remorse, no apology. Just indifference. It was then that I realized the depth of the betrayal. It wasn't just the affair, it wasn't just the physical act that hurt. It was everything else. The manipulation, the lies, the constant disrespect. Emily had made me feel like I was the problem, like I was the one who had pushed her to it. And I had let her. The hardest part, though, wasn't confronting her or finding out about the affair. It was dealing with the emotional fallout. The pain of realizing that the woman I had loved for years, the woman I had trusted with everything, was capable of such cruelty. It felt like someone had ripped out my heart and replaced it with an emptiness that refused to go away. I couldn't escape the anger that bubbled to the surface every time I thought about her. The anger wasn't just for the betrayal. It was for everything I had given up, for the trust one had freely given, only to have it stomped on by someone I had called my wife. But what hurt the most was the way she had discarded me so easily. I had spent so much of my life trying to be the man she needed, trying to build a future with her, and yet, in the end, I was nothing more than a convenience for her. I was just a stepping stone, a part of her life until something better came along. And when it did, I was tossed aside like a broken toy. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, reliving every moment, every word, every glance. I wanted answers, but every time I thought I had them, they slipped further away. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I really knew her. I had spent all these years believing in something that wasn't real. She wasn't the woman I had married. She was someone else entirely, someone I didn't even recognize. And that was the hardest pill to swallow. I tried to talk to friends, to open up to people who had known me before Emily came into the picture. I had to let them know what had happened, because bottling it all up was suffocating me. But as soon as the words left my mouth, I could see the pity in their eyes. I hated it. I didn't want their sympathy. I didn't want to be seen as the guy who got cheated on. I wanted to be the guy who walked away, who moved on, who came out stronger on the other side. But that wasn't the reality. The reality was that I felt small, worthless, and utterly broken. I had no idea where to go from here. I threw myself into work to distract myself, but it only worked for so long. The emptiness crept back in during the quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts. I would replay the confrontation, wondering if there was something I could have done differently, if there was some way I could have saved her from herself. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was nothing I could have done. She had made her choice. She had chosen him, not me. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't change that. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization that I had been living in a fantasy, and now that it was over, I had to figure out who I really was. I had to rebuild my life, piece by piece, and it terrified me. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know if I even wanted to. The person I had been was gone, and the person I was becoming felt like a stranger. But I couldn't stay stuck forever. I had to find a way out of this pain. I had to reclaim my life, my identity. And maybe, just maybe in time, I would learn to trust again. But for now, I needed space. Space to grieve, space to heal. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I had to put myself first. The days blurred into weeks, and the weight of everything, the betrayal, the hurt, the questions, began to feel unbearable. I was no longer the man I had been when Emily and I first got together. I had been shattered, reassembled into something unrecognizable, and I knew it wasn't healthy to keep walking around with that weight. It was hard. Every step felt like I was trudging through thick mud, but I made myself do it. I had no choice. I had to find a way to heal, to move past the wreckage she had left in her wake. A part of me wondered if I would ever be able to forgive her. Could I look back at all the good moments we shared and pretend they hadn't been tainted by the lies? Could I forget the way she had mocked me during that final confrontation, the way she dismissed my pain as if it were nothing? The truth was, I didn't know. I didn't have the answers, and maybe I never would. But as the days went on, something began to shift in me. I stopped searching for validation from others, stopped needing their pity. For the first time, I started to see the value in myself. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't easy. But little by little, I began to rebuild. I joined a gym to regain the sense of control I had lost. My body had become a reflection of the emotional turmoil I had been carrying, and it was time to change that. I poured my energy into lifting weights, into feeling strong again, into making my body a vessel for something better than the pain I had been through. Slowly, I watched the pounds melt away, the tension in my shoulders ease, and a new version of myself begin to emerge. But it wasn't just physical. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I had drifted away from in the haze of my marriage. We would meet for beers, for dinners, and talk about everything but what had happened. It was like I was building a new life, piece by piece, with these people who had never judged me, never manipulated me. I even took a few trips by myself, far away from everything that reminded me of her. I went to places I had always wanted to visit, places I had put off because I had been too busy building a life with someone who never really cared about what I wanted. And during those trips, I had moments of peace. I saw things I had never seen before, experienced things I had never allowed myself to. I began to discover parts of myself I hadn't known were still there. But despite all this, there were still days when I would think about Emily. There were still nights when I would wonder what she was doing, whether she was still with him, whether she ever thought about me. I tried not to care. I tried to remind myself that she wasn't my problem anymore. But that was the hardest part, letting go of something that had been such a huge part of my life for so long. And then one day, out of nowhere, I got a text from her. My phone buzzed, and I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. "Can we talk?" it said. I felt a cold rush of anger surge through me, but it was different this time. It wasn't that familiar ache of betrayal. It wasn't the hurt from before. It was something else, something I hadn't expected: indifference. What was there left to talk about? She had made her choices. She had thrown me away for someone else, and there was no going back from that. But part of me wondered what she wanted. Was she really going to try to pull me back into her mess? Was she going to apologize, or, more likely, try to manipulate me again, make me feel like I was the one in the wrong? I didn't respond immediately. For the first time in a long time, I took a breath and reminded myself that I didn't need her. I didn't need her lies. I didn't need her pity. I didn't need her at all. So I made a choice. I deleted the message. I blocked her number. It was a small action, but in that moment, it felt like a huge victory. It was me taking back control. It was me telling her, without a word, that I was done. I was done with her manipulations, her deceit, her broken promises. I was done allowing her to occupy space in my life and my thoughts. And in that instant, I realized something important. I had moved on. Not completely, not entirely, but enough. I had learned to live without her. I had learned to live for myself. In the end, the pain of her betrayal didn't define me. It didn't break me. I was stronger than I had ever been, and I would continue to grow. If there was anything I had learned from all of this, it was that people like Emily, manipulative, selfish, and deceitful, didn't deserve a second chance. And I didn't need to give her one. I didn't need to beg for closure. I didn't need her to validate my feelings. I was enough on my own. And that realization made all the difference.